I don't know when I first realized I was watching him more than the others. At first, it felt harmless. Just a face in a classroom. One among 30. But some faces, they stay with you, even when they shouldn't. His name was Thomas. Hello, everyone. My name is Julia Carter. I'm 29 years old. I work at a college in the city. I teach English literature to second-year students. It's a job I take seriously. My classroom is my world, a space where language matters, where stories guide the heart more safely than real life ever could. I've always believed in boundaries, in rules, in the line between teacher and student, and I've always kept that line clear, until him. Thomas sat in the second row, always early, always alone. He never came in talking, never looked rushed. He would just walk in quietly, take his seat, open his notebook, and wait. No phone, no headphones, no need for small talk. He looked like someone who read by choice, like someone who kept secrets, but never sloppily. I noticed that, more than I should have. He wasn't like the others. And the first time he looked at me, really looked, I felt it. It was a Wednesday. We were discussing Shakespeare's Othello. Why do we find tragedy so beautiful? I asked the class. Some mumbled. One girl yawned. Another picked at her nails. But Thomas looked directly at me. His eyes didn't flicker. He didn't glance and look away. It wasn't flirtatious. It wasn't rude. It was still, focused, intimate, in the quietest way possible. I looked away first. I told myself it was nothing, that I'd imagined the feeling in my stomach, the slight heat on my neck. I've been teaching for years. I've seen crushes. I've handled awkward compliments, late essays with extra flattery, even the occasional love poem hidden in a paper. But this didn't feel like a crush. And the worst part, it didn't feel one-sided. He started staying after class, not every day, just enough for me to notice. At first, he asked about the reading. Then he asked about my opinion. Do you think Shakespeare really believed love is weakness? Do you think people ever truly know when they're crossing a line? Or does it always start as something innocent? He smiled when he asked that. I didn't. I felt my chest tighten. I gave him a professional answer. In literature, it depends. He tilted his head, amused. That's a safe answer, he said, and I said nothing. Let me pause here for a second. If you're still here, still listening, let me ask you something. Have you ever felt your heart skip for someone, and deep down, you knew it wasn't supposed to? You don't have to type it in the comments. You don't even have to say it out loud. Just nod. I'll feel it. Right from here. And hey, if this story's already pulling you in, go ahead and tap the like button. It helps more than you think, because trust me, it only gets messier from here. Back to Thomas. I stopped making eye contact with him. I avoided the second row when I paced the classroom. I gave cold, generic feedback on his essays. But when he said my name, just Miss Carter, it landed differently. It felt full. Like he was saying it with meaning. Then he missed class. Just once. But I noticed I shouldn't have. But I did. I found myself distracted the whole day. Worried? No. Just unsettled. The next class, he walked in late, hair damp from the rain, breath soft, not rushed. Everyone turned to look. I turned too. Our eyes met. He smiled, not a wide smile, just a knowing one, and I smiled back, for a second, then looked away. That night, I stayed late in my office. I had a stack of papers to grade. Thomas had submitted his essay early. Of course he had. I opened it. The first line stopped me cold. There are some stories where nothing happens out loud, but everything happens anyway. I read it again. I dropped the paper. My hands shook. I should have marked him down for being vague, for being too poetic. But instead, I memorized the line. And that's when I knew. This wasn't just a student I was noticing. This was a line I was getting dangerously close to crossing. I did everything I could to put space between us. After that line in his essay, there are some stories where nothing happens out loud, but everything happens anyway. I felt it, like something inside me had been quietly opened. And now, I couldn't close it, so I made rules. No eye contact, no lingering after class, no reading his name out loud when handing back papers, no checking if he was in the second row the moment I walked in. I told myself it was working. But the truth? I was still thinking about him. Not in the way you might think. It wasn't physical. It was worse. It was emotional, quiet, persistent, and completely invisible to anyone but me. One afternoon, he stayed after class again. I was organizing papers, pretending not to see him. Then I heard his voice. I read something last night. It reminded me of what you said. I didn't look up. About what? He leaned against the desk. Not too close, but close enough. That love is less about big moments, and more about the things we don't say out loud. I stayed silent. Then he added, "Some things don't need to be spoken to be understood." I finally looked at him, and he smiled. Soft, steady, knowing. I didn't smile back. Instead, I said, "You should go." That night, I couldn't sleep. I laid in bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about how I was the adult, the teacher, the one who knew better. I wasn't supposed to feel this, and yet I wasn't imagining it either. He knew. That was the dangerous part. He knew. The next week, he didn't come to class again and once again. I noticed I told myself I was just tracking attendance. That's what teachers do, right? But when I checked the list and saw his name, my fingers hovered there a little too long. When he came back, he didn't say much. He just slid his paper onto my desk, sat in the second row, and looked out the window during most of class. I told myself this was good. That distance was safe. That silence was helpful. But it didn't feel good. It felt cold, like I had pushed away something soft before I even got to hold it. And then came the rain. It was a Friday afternoon. I had stayed late in my office, grading papers. The halls were quiet, the kind of quiet that presses against your skin. I was just about to leave when I heard a knock. It was him. His hair was wet. His backpack slung over one shoulder. His eyes tired. "I didn't mean to bother you," he said. "You are," I replied. But I didn't close the door. He stepped back. "Sorry," and I hated myself for the way my heart pulled when he turned to leave. "Wait." He stopped. I took a breath. "I can't be who you want me to be." He turned slowly. "I haven't asked you to be anything." And that's when I realized he never had. He had only looked, spoken, listened, and it was me who filled in the blanks. Now, if you're still here, still listening, I need to ask, have you ever felt yourself slipping toward something you knew you weren't supposed to want, but you just couldn't stop? Have you ever stood at the edge of a feeling and told yourself it was safe as long as you didn't move? Back in the hallway, I finally said it. "You should really go." And this time, he did. No words, no look back, just the sound of his footsteps growing smaller. I closed the door, locked it, sat down in the chair, and I cried. Not because I was in love, but because I was terrified that I might be. It was never supposed to happen. If I say that out loud, does it make me sound innocent? Because I wasn't. Not really. But I also wasn't planning it. It wasn't something I thought about, then chose. It was something I felt. And then something I didn't stop. It started with a simple email from him. The subject line read, "Extra credit question." And I almost laughed, because that wasn't what it was about. I knew that the second I opened it. If you could spend one evening talking with anyone, fictional or real, who would it be? And what would you ask them? No greeting, no signature, just that. I waited 2 hours to reply. I typed, deleted, typed again. Finally, I wrote back, Virginia Woolf. I'd ask if she still believed it was brave to disappear. He responded in 5 minutes. That's the saddest answer I've ever loved. I didn't reply. But that night, I dreamt of drowning in letters, of voices without faces, and of Thomas, standing just outside the door, waiting to be let in. 3 days later, it happened. The night. The one I still replay in my head like a scene I can't rewind far enough. I was on campus late again. Student writing conference. My last appointment canceled. It was raining. Of course it was. I stayed in the classroom instead of walking back to my office. The lights were dim. The room was quiet. Then the door opened. And there he was. Soaking wet. No umbrella. Holding a paper in one hand. He smiled. I forgot to turn this in. I didn't smile back. You know this isn't your drop-off time. I know. He didn't leave, and I didn't ask him to. We stood in silence. He looked at the desk, then at me. I stepped back, but I didn't move far enough, and then he asked me a question. It was soft, but it landed hard. Why are you afraid of me? I felt heat rise to my face. I'm not. You are, he said gently. You've been afraid since the first time I looked at you. I swallowed, and I said something I'll never forget. Because once the words left my mouth, I knew I'd already crossed it. The line. I said, "You're not the one I'm afraid of." He took a step forward. Just one, and I didn't step back. Now, I want you to pause with me here. Right here. Before I tell you what happened next. Let me ask you, have you ever stood at the edge of something and thought, if I take one more step, I'm no longer who I was? If you felt that, truly felt it, let me know in the comments. Just say, I've been there. Because this next part, this is the step. He didn't kiss me. I kissed him. I don't remember how it started, only that suddenly my hands were on his shirt and his hands were on my back, and we were two people doing something that had been waiting to happen for months. It was slow, gentle, but not innocent. It was everything we weren't allowed to be, wrapped into a single, breathless moment. It didn't last long, 5 minutes maybe. But when we pulled apart, we were no longer teacher and student. We were something else. Something fragile. Something terrifying. He whispered, "Tell me to forget this, and I will." And I said, "Nothing." I just picked up his paper from the floor, pressed it into his chest, and walked away. I didn't look back, because if I did, I knew I'd stay. I drove home with the windows down, letting the rain hit my skin, trying to wash it off, the guilt, the fear, the wanting. But water can't erase what's already etched into the body. That night, I sat on my floor. Wet hair, empty room, full heart, trembling hands. I told myself, this was just a moment. But a part of me whispered, "No, Julia, this was a beginning." We didn't speak about it after that night. No texts, no looks in class, nothing. He came to my lectures, sat in the same seat, second row, second chair. He opened his notebook like always, took notes. Didn't say a word. I did the same, except every word I said to the class felt like a lie. Because I wasn't just teaching anymore. I was protecting a secret, and every time I said something like, "Power becomes dangerous when it's hidden in silence," I felt like I was talking about myself. For a while, I told myself it would fade. That what happened in that classroom, the kiss, the fire, was a moment, a mistake, an impulse I could outrun. But desire is a patient thing. It doesn't shout. It whispers. And it whispered. His name in every quiet space. One Thursday, I was in the library, looking for a copy of Death in Venice for a senior seminar, and he was there. Of course he was. Back corner. Headphones in. A stack of books on the table. He didn't see me at first, but I saw him, and the part of me that wanted to disappear stood still. I turned to leave, but then I heard his voice. He had removed his headphones. "Miss Carter." I froze. He wasn't smiling. He looked like someone carrying a storm inside. I've been trying to do the right thing, he said. I looked around. We were alone. I said, then keep doing it. He stepped forward, and his voice broke. But I'm drowning in it. I didn't answer. I couldn't, because that was the moment I realized he wasn't just a boy with a crush. He was hurting too, and I had become the reason. Later that evening, I got an email from the department head. Just a reminder about the ethics policy. A friendly note. Nothing personal, but it hit me like a blade. Was someone watching? Did someone know? Was I too obvious? Had I failed? The next class. I couldn't look at him. I rushed through the lecture. Dismissed. The students 5 minutes early, and Thomas didn't stay behind. He walked out without looking at me, and somehow, that hurt more than the kiss. Now let me pause right here and ask, have you ever done something you couldn't undo? Not something you regret, but something that felt right even though it was wrong? And now it just sits in your chest like a weight you can't shake? If you've ever felt that, tell me in the comments. Just say, I know the feeling, because sometimes I just need to know I'm not the only one. Back at home, I stood in front of the mirror, and I didn't recognize the woman staring back at me. She looked older, sadder, like someone who used to believe in control, and was now afraid of her own reflection. I whispered to the mirror, tell me what to do. But the mirror said nothing. A week passed. Then 2. No messages, no accidental meetings, no late-night emails, just silence. And I started to believe it was really over. Then, one night, I walked into my office, and there it was, a folded piece of paper on my desk. No name, no signature, just one sentence written in his handwriting. If this were fiction, you'd be mine. I held it like a confession, sat with it in the dark, and I cried, because it wasn't fiction, and that meant we could never be safe. I didn't see it coming. Maybe I should have. But when you're walking through fog, you don't always notice the cliff until your foot is already hanging off the edge. The letter he left in my office. If this were fiction, you'd be mine. I kept it. I didn't throw it away. I didn't tear it into pieces like I should have. I folded it, placed it in the back of a drawer, and locked it. But locks don't keep guilt out. I began to lose my grip on the class. I stumbled over lines I'd taught a dozen times, mispronounced names, forgot simple points. Students noticed. So did my colleagues. One of them, Ellen, pulled me aside after a meeting. "Everything okay?" she asked. I smiled. "Just tired," I said. She nodded. "Well, if you ever need to talk." I thanked her, but I didn't tell her the truth. That I wasn't tired. I was unraveling. Then it happened. The moment I'd feared, but somehow still didn't expect. I was called into the department office. The chair was kind, too kind. She handed me a printed email, anonymous, short, direct. I believe Miss Carter has developed an inappropriate relationship with a male student. I've seen them meeting alone after class. She plays favorites. Something's going on. No name, no proof, just words. But sometimes words are enough to start a fire. My mouth went dry. I told her the truth, or rather part of it. I've met with students outside class, I said. That's part of our job. I've never crossed a line. She nodded, but I could see it, the flicker of doubt. Just be careful, she said. We live in glass houses. After that, I panicked. I deleted old emails, cleared my phone. I removed the letter from my drawer. I took it home and burned it. I watched the paper curl and blacken in a glass dish in my kitchen sink. But even as the flame disappeared, I didn't feel clean, because the truth was still alive, in him and in me. Now let me stop here for a second. Just pause. Have you ever made a mistake, then tried to bury it, only to realize you buried it inside yourself? And now it grows in you like a rootless thing? If that's ever been you, tell me in the comments. Just write. I've carried it too. Because sometimes we speak just to keep the dark from swallowing us whole. After the email, Thomas stayed away. He avoided me, didn't come to office hours, didn't look at me in class. He was protecting me, and somehow that made it worse. Because every silence between us screamed, this was real, and now it's dangerous. Final exams came. He turned in his paper without a word. No note this time, just a final sentence that felt like a goodbye. In tragedy, the hero always waits too long to act. I read that line over and over. Was he talking about himself or me? I cried in the staff bathroom that day, curled in a stall, hand over my mouth, shaking, because I knew this wasn't going to end well. 2 weeks later, I received another call, this one from the dean's office. They were opening a formal inquiry. They wanted to talk again, more seriously this time. Someone had come forward. Someone had seen us, not in the classroom, not at my office, but weeks ago. That night, the hallway. They saw him walk out, wet hair, paper in hand, and me, standing in the door, watching him go. I hung up the phone, and everything inside me just stopped. I didn't sleep the night before the meeting. I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the walls, listening to the sound of my own breathing. I kept waiting for the moment I'd find the right words, some explanation, some story that would make everything okay, but some stories don't have a way out, only a way down. The dean was polite, professional. He asked questions in a careful tone, like he already knew the answers, but wanted to see if I would lie. I didn't lie, but I didn't tell the full truth either. I said, we had a connection. I felt it. He felt it. But I never intended to act on it. There was one mistake. A single moment. He looked at me like he'd heard it all before. Maybe he had. After that meeting, I was put on administrative leave. Just a quiet email. Pending review, please refrain from all campus activity. My lectures were reassigned. My students were told I was taking time for personal matters, but I knew what they were whispering. Everyone always knows, even when no one says it out loud. I didn't hear from Thomas. I didn't expect to. I thought maybe he was angry, ashamed, or just protecting himself. I told myself that was good. Distance meant safety. Distance meant survival. But it didn't feel like safety. It felt like grief. One evening, nearly a month later, I saw him again at the bookstore. I was there for distraction, trying to remember what it felt like to love language for its own sake. And then, he walked in, no warning, no build-up, just there. He froze when he saw me. I said nothing, but his eyes, they were tired, older, like both of us had aged years in a few weeks. He stepped toward me. "Hi," he said. It hit me like thunder. "Hi," I replied. We stood between shelves of fiction and memory, like characters in a book no one should ever write. He said, "I never told anyone." "Not really?" I nodded. "I know." "But they still knew," he said. "Yes." We stood there, two people who once shared something too big for the world they were in. And now, there was nothing to hold on to, just silence. "I miss you," he whispered, and I closed my eyes. "Don't say that," I said. "It doesn't help." He nodded. "I'm sorry." Then he took a breath. "I loved you, you know." Tears stung my eyes. "I know." "And you?" I looked at him and said the truth. "I loved you the way a flame loves air, fully, dangerously, and far too fast." He looked down. "I don't think I'll ever forget you." "You shouldn't," I said. "But you will. One day." He opened his mouth like he wanted to argue, but instead, he just said, "Goodbye," and he left. That was the last time I saw him. He graduated the next year, quietly, with honors. I didn't go to the ceremony. I watched from home, the live stream. My laptop screen showing young faces in caps and gowns, and there he was, smiling, shaking hands. Free. As for me, I resigned. No letter, no speech, just a signature on a line. Some people called it a scandal, others called it sad. But to me, it was a story, one I never should have stepped into. Now if you're still here, still listening, I want to thank you. Not everyone stays until the end of a tragedy. Some people walk out halfway, turn it off, look away. But you stayed. So, let me leave you with this. Sometimes the greatest love stories are the ones that never had a chance to end well. Because they weren't meant to be forever. They were meant to show us something we weren't ready to learn. And I learned, too late maybe. But I learned. If this story stirred something in you, if you felt it, even a little, please hit the like button. Leave a comment and tell me. What would you have done in her place? And if you want more stories like this, raw, human, and a little messy, make sure to subscribe. Goodbye for now.